Hello, I'm April Davila with Sit Right Here, and this is First Page Fridays, where we read over the first page of someone's manuscript, either a novel or short story, and we do a live edit of it so that we can learn from the things that they're doing well and from the things that they could do better at. And we're all in this together. So the first thing we do is shrink me down here. Put me aside. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We do this every Friday. And if you would like to send in your page, there's a link in the notes below this video where you can click to send in your page and we will edit it for you live or recorded live and get some feedback on your page. So the first thing we do is read through the 250 words. 250 words is about what lands on the first page of a novel. So that's where we start. Olivia's greatest fear, August 1942, New Orleans, Louisiana. You can't change a man's heart, Olivia. Only God can do that. Her father's voice haunted her. If only she'd listened to her wise father's advice, she wouldn't be in this predicament. Calling home was the last thing Olivia wanted to do. She and Keith had eloped against the wishes of her family, especially her father. Olivia will never forget the last conversation she had with him. He's got nothing to offer you, Olivia. He's an alcoholic just like his father. What you see in him, I'll never know. A beautiful girl like you deserves a good man. For heaven's sake, you're only 18. Don't settle for the first guy who winks at you. Her father's words rang like a gong in her head. Chief Elmore had 5 beautiful daughters. He knew he wasn't supposed to have favorites, but he had high hopes for Olivia. She was not only beautiful, but smart, determined, and sensitive too. That could be her downfall. She was too sensitive. He had always been proud of how Olivia cared for others more than herself sometimes. She had the heart of forgiveness and kindness few girls had her age. That came from having an invalid mother, someone she cared for daily, not to mention her younger siblings. She was born with empathy. Chief Elmore beamed with pride when he saw her volunteering at school and teaching children to read. He heard her tell them, education is the most important gift you have, and it starts with learning to read well. All that stopped the day she met Keith. All right. So, I'm guessing this is either probably literary fiction or romance, could be either. And I think we'll just kind of, let's see, the first thing that jumps out at me, because the prose are actually, that's pretty solid. We'll get to those, but I feel like it's worth noting, like right from the start here. Hold on, I'm gonna turn on my track changes. Is that we have a point of view shift here. So we start with, we're in Olivia's point of view. She, like, you can't change the man's heart, Olivia. Only God can do that. Her father's voice haunted her. If only she'd listened to her wise father's advice, she wouldn't be in this predicament. I really like this first sentence because it hints at a predicament. It hints at something that isn't right, some kind of challenge, something that our character is going to have to deal with. That's an excellent thing to get onto the first page. And this writer does it in the first sentence. So that's great. Calling home was the last thing she wanted to do. So at that point, I'm a little confused about the so is she calling home? Calling home is the last thing Olivia wanted to do. So this makes me think like it almost makes it sound like this is like her in a conversation with her father, but then it says her father's voice haunted her. So I'm guessing this is more of like a memory. You could clarify that. Like if this were me, I would clarify this by just making this italics. Well, and actually, no, I'm not going to do it as track changes. We're going to just do it as actual editing, and then you can always rewind the video and look at what it was before. So if this were me, and how I'm interpreting this is that it is a memory, I'd probably put it in italics so that I clarify to the reader that this is not part of a conversation that's part of calling home, but that she's preparing to call home, really. And then calling home is the last thing. You might, the writer, I'm addressing you here, you might put in a little bit of where she's standing, right? So you could say something like, with the phone in her hand, or staring at the phone in her hand. I mean, again, this is not my story. I'm making suggestions. You would definitely tweak them and make them better and make them your own. But I think like putting us into the scene of her standing, holding the phone, she knew, she knew, staring at the phone in her hand. I would probably say Olivia hesitated. Olivia hesitated. Calling home was the last thing she wanted to do. So just just giving us like a little bit of like where is she standing. You might like it might even be worth giving us a little bit of where she is, right? Is she, because it's a very different story if she's standing with the phone in her hand in the middle of the Mojave Desert trying to get a signal versus like in her, well, I guess we find out later that she's in New Orleans. No, it says right here, New Orleans. Okay, so we've set this. We know she's not in the desert, but you can reinforce that here. Is she standing in the middle of a bar? Is she standing like in that wonderful old cemetery they have in New Orleans? Like you could give us a little bit more about what's happening in the story by anchoring us in place. Of course, you don't want to burden the first page with a ton of description. So if you can't do it in a short couple of words, maybe it doesn't belong here. But just a note there, you could reinforce this location by telling us where she's standing, like standing in a bar on what's the famous street in New Orleans? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, I think you get my point. Like put her in a place as she's thinking about calling home. And then says Olivia will never forget the last conversation she had with him. Now, I am not a copy editor. I'm a line and developmental editor. So this might be would because you're in past tense. Or are you in past tense? No, her father's voice haunted her. If only she'd listened, she wouldn't be. And see, this sounds like past tense. So this would be. So you want to say she stared past tense at the phone in her hand and hesitated. All right, down. Calling home was the last thing she wanted to do. Yes, we're in past tense. Okay, they had eloped. So Olivia, this is probably should be would, but again, that's more of a question for a copy editor. Olivia would never forget the last conversation she had with him. And it might be had with him, probably not, more of had. Okay. He's got nothing to offer you, Olivia. He's an alcoholic just like his father. What you see in him, I'll never know. A beautiful girl like you deserves a good man. For heaven's sake, you're only 18. Don't settle for the first guy who winks at you. This is a lot of, you probably don't need this much, right? Like, I think you could even just be like, you could get, I mean, if it's important that he's an alcoholic, maybe start with the stuff that's most important, that like he's an alcoholic just like his father, because that tells us about the character, which is a good thing to do on the first pages. But and then I would trim this way down. Like don't settle for the first guy who winks at you. Even if that isn't what she did, it gives us a perspective of what her father thinks she did, which is good. So I would just trim that way down. And then her father's words rang like a gong in her head. So is this a continuation of what she's remembering of her father having said? Because if so, again, this might need to be like italics, right? So that we know that this isn't part of a conversation that she's having right now, but rather a memory. I would also probably put these all in one paragraph, and then generally speaking, well, if we're going to get into formatting, which we generally don't in these, but when you send things, you always want to do a double space, which I'm actually not going to do because it makes it harder to see the whole thing. But in terms of basic formatting, you want a double space, you want to indent your paragraphs. Okay, she stared at the phone in her hand and hesitated. Calling home was the last thing she wanted to do. She and Keith had eloped against the wishes of her family, especially her father. Olivia would never forget the last conversation she had with him. Okay, guy who winks at you. And since we kind of know that like these are words that are ringing in her head, I don't know that you need this line here. I'm going to leave it, but the real estate on your first page is so precious that you don't want to state things twice. And we're kind of already getting the sense that she's thinking about her father's words, that they're ringing in her head. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that because I don't think you need it. We are experiencing, you are showing us that you don't have to tell us it at the same time. Now here's where it gets a little, that POV shift I was talking about. We jump into Chief Elmore's head here, and we don't actually know that her father is Chief Elmore. I'm assuming as much, and I'm assuming, we said he had high hopes for Olivia. So, okay, so we figured it out. I wonder if there's a way to make that more clear, but I don't know. You're only on the third paragraph. I think it's probably okay to just let that be. The bigger challenge here is that we've switched POV, that we start in Olivia's point of view. She's stressed about calling her dad. His words are ringing in her head. And then we jump to his point of view. And not even, I mean, very high level. He had 5 beautiful daughters. He knew he wasn't supposed to have favorites. Olivia was special. Um, and there's no scene work here, right? We're just kind of learning about dad in general. This is a little tricky. You're not really okay, let's assume, and then if either literary fiction or romance, I'm going to assume that Olivia is our main character, and possibly that her new husband is likewise Keith, because it all that stopped the day she met Keith. This sounds like it's leading into the story of Keith and Olivia. Now, if dad is the main character, we should start with dad. You should put him in scene, say, put him in his day-to-day, right? Or in a tense situation. Maybe he's arguing with one of his younger daughters who like doesn't live up to his expectations. And then we get a little glimpse of like, he wasn't supposed to have favorites, but Olivia was his favorite. This is tricky. And again, it works if you can make it work. I'm not a believer in hard and fast rules when it comes to fiction. Fiction is art. But it is a little tricky that we don't really get to know anything about Olivia except that she's in New Orleans. She married against her father's wishes. I don't really get a sense of like how old she is. Is she is she literally 18? Or did she marry at 18? Does she have a job? Is she pregnant? Like, why does someone get married that young? I think it might be interesting to give us a little bit more about her. Like, maybe getting to the part that like the day that she met Keith. That's the part that for me, this is where the story feels like the story is going more interesting. But I don't want to make assumptions. So let's assume that it's the story of Olivia and her father. So Olivia is one of our main characters, and then the father, Chief Elmore, is one of the main characters. That said, you definitely still want to put him in scene. So Chief Elmore woke that morning with a headache. And I hate to like do these kinds of edits because I don't want to put your character in a scene that they wouldn't be in, but stories land better with readers if you put your characters in a scene rather than just kind of telling us about who they are in general. His youngest daughter was screaming in the hallway. Something about like, I'm imagining of the house full of 5 beautiful daughters, their arguments over the bathroom, right? It's kind of cliche, but like I'm working with what I've got here. This younger daughter was screaming in the hallway. You could make it like them fighting over the bathroom or something. He missed Olivia. So see how like already we're like dropping into a specific scene with Chief Elmore. And then you can get into a little bit of the expository. Like, he had 5 beautiful daughters, and he knew he wasn't supposed to have favorites. So the reason I would put the and here is varying up your sentence length a little bit. And granted, I put these sentences on your page, in your mouth, whatever. And almost certainly I'm getting this wrong, but hopefully you'll get the idea that like you want to put them in scene. And then what you want to do is vary up the sentence length. So this sentence is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they are exactly the same length. And then you want to vary these things. Like you don't want the cadence to be really repetitive. So you put in I did this, but you put in something shorter. He missed Olivia. It feels like a punctuation. And then you don't want to repeat that cadence. And so you put in a sentence, you combine 2 sentences to make it a little longer and give it a nice variation of cadence. So he had 5 beautiful daughters and he knew he wasn't supposed to have favorites. But he had high hopes for Olivia. She was not only beautiful, but smart, determined, and sensitive too. Now, again, there's a lot of telling here. That could be her downfall. She was too sensitive. These are things that they would land more solidly. They would be more powerful if you show us in scene. And so it may not belong on the first page. Let's see here. You want to start getting into the actual, like what happens in this story. And since we only spent these two short paragraphs with Olivia here, I think to keep the, and again, I'm making assumptions with what I've got to work with, but if it's Olivia and her father, they're the two main characters, you'd want to give about the same amount of time to the chief too, before you segue into like this, whatever the next scene is. So to keep that rhythm going, let's see here. We'll do a similar paragraph structure. That could be her downfall. She was too sensitive. He had always been proud of how Olivia cared for others. So I think this is more generally like a father loving his daughter. Like, I don't know. There probably are fathers out there who would be like, what a dumbass my daughter is. But most fathers are going to be like, yeah, she was beautiful and sensitive and had high hopes for her. So this is not a super attention grabbing bit of the page here, but what is really interesting is this bit. This is telling us a lot. This came from having an invalid mother, someone she cared for daily, not to mention her younger siblings. She was born with empathy. Um, Even if she wasn't born with empathy, an invalid mother and four younger siblings would kind of force it on her, I would think. So I think maybe you could even cut all of this. That's what I would suggest. Um, and instead of that, we could change this to be, okay, she was not only beautiful, smart, but smart, determined, and sensitive too. Her character was the result of having, again, this is not perfect. You'd want to tweak it and you have to put it in your words. I'm just making suggestions. Her character was the result of her impeachable character. No, it's not quite the right word. What would Chief Elmore say? Her admirable character was the result of having an invalid mother, someone she cared for daily, not to mention her younger siblings. And I might take this out. She was born with empathy. And then again, that like this is almost like a scene, but it's more like a memory. I don't know. You don't really have room in this space to like jump us back to some time he saw her volunteering at a school teaching. Like this could be a whole scene. And I would absolutely like if this is a story about Olivia and her dad, this is a scene you would want to work in later as either a flashback or a longer memory, but give it the time that it's due to show us as the reader how patient and sensitive and kind she is, but to just kind of drop it in as a two-liner, and if it's going to be the first bit of dialogue, I wonder if this is a big enough moment to really warrant having this space on the first page. I would probably, let's see here, all that stopped. Okay, yeah, I think what I would do is I would suggest going all that stopped, and then you have to define stopped. Sorry, you don't have to define stopped, you have to define all that, right? Because what all that is referring to is like her being a good person. So I think we could be a little more specific here. Someone she cared for daily, not to mention her younger siblings. And I'd probably put a but because it's a turn in the thinking process. But everything changed the day she met Keith. And this also raises the question in terms of POV, was Dad there the day she met Keith? And okay, so if it were me and I were telling the story, I would probably come back to Olivia. Because you're in Dad's perspective, I would say everything changed when she met Keith. Because he would know that it changed when she met him, but he might not be the one to tell us about the day that she met Keith. On the day Olivia met Keith. And so now you can jump back into Olivia. Oops. Sorry, now you can jump back into Olivia's point of view. She had been where? We're reaching the end of our time here, so I'm not going to try to fill in the rest of the story, especially given that it's not my story and I don't know the details. But hopefully you can see how this changes the structure. It at least acknowledges that there's two POVs. Now, if it is mostly Olivia, if this is more Olivia's story, I would cut to the chief's perspective and I would stay with Olivia and just go directly to on the day Olivia met Keith. if that's where this story is going. But again, consider drop us into a scene where something is happening with a certain number of people in a certain place and get that on the page. But in general, solid writing, and I would definitely be curious to keep reading this story.